Hi, welcome to Chez Rosa. I'm Kyle Robinson, and thank you for joining us for our holiday cooking demonstration. Today we're going to prepare for you some Parisian-style gnocchis with a Mornay sauce along with some seasonal vegetables. What I'd like to first start off by explaining is the difference between Parisian-style gnocchis and Italian-style. Italian-style gnocchis utilize a base of potato, while Parisian-style gnocchis utilize a base of pâte à choux, which is the same base that you would use to maybe make cream puffs or eclairs. This is just a more savory version of that. Our first step of the cooking process is going to utilize water, whole milk, sugar, kosher salt, and butter. We're going to bring all of those ingredients to a simmer, and then we're going to fold some flour in there. So add our butter, milk, water, salt, and sugar. And let's take these ingredients over to the stove and let's start cooking. All right, so here we are in the kitchen. We've got our pot on the stove. We're going to turn this on to about medium heat, and we're going to bring all of our ingredients up to a simmer. We just want to make sure that the butter's melted and that everything's at a light simmer. This doesn't need to be at a roaring boil or anything like that. Our pot is here. We're at a nice light simmer. Now we're going to add all of our flour in there right in one shot. Make sure you get it all in there. And we're gonna stir until everything is really well incorporated, cooking the mixture for about 2 minutes. So now at this point we can see that our flour is starting to adhere a little bit to the bottom of the pan. Our dough, it's nice and shiny, we have a little bit of a sheen to it. That means we're ready to go on to the mixer. Come on. All right, so here we have our finished pâte à choux. You just want to make sure that everything has been well incorporated, and also most importantly that this mixture is still very hot. That's going to be important with our next process of adding the cheese to the mixture. That way everything gets incorporated very well. And now we've outfitted our mixer with the paddle attachment. And we're going to start mixing this on about medium speed. Now we want to continue mixing the dough until the cheese is well incorporated and the mixture has cooled down to about room temperature. So you just want to give yourself a little touch to the side of the bowl. If the bowl is still very hot, that means it still needs to continue mixing. We want it to come down to about room temperature, and then it'll be ready to go to continue when we add our eggs. So now we're going to go on to the next step of the process, in which we're going to add some Dijon mustard, as well as some minced fresh herbs. I have here some parsley, chive, and thyme leaves, but you can really use whatever that you have around the house. If you only have parsley, that's great, just use that in there. If you have rosemary, mince that up real fine, that's delicious in the mix as well. You know, what's great about this recipe, it's very versatile, and so you can use some ingredients that you might have around the refrigerator already. So let's go ahead and mince up some herbs and add those to our mix. So now we're going to add our herbs and our Dijon mustard to the mix. Now we're going to get the mixer going again to make sure that those ingredients are incorporated. At this point, it seems like our mixture is about ready to add our eggs. It's come down to about room temperature. It's still warm to the touch, but not very hot, which is extremely important. And so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to add half of our eggs, and then we're going to add eggs individually to make sure that they are fully incorporated before we add the additional egg, and that's going to finish off our base. And once that last one goes in, we're just going to let that mix for about another 1 to 2 minutes just to make sure it's all well incorporated. Now, like I mentioned earlier, what's great about this recipe is a lot of these ingredients can be prepared ahead of time. So if you have some spare time in the morning, you know, you can make this base recipe, and then refrigerate it for later on for cooking, and it just can take a little bit of stress off your day for dinner. So we have our finished dough. We're gonna put the finished dough into a pastry bag so we can prepare it for cooking. So just get our paddle attachment off here. Here we have our finished dough. Get this into the pastry bag. And we just want to make sure that we're squeezing our dough right down as far as to the bottom as we can. And then we're going to just tie off the top of the bag. We got this all finished up. Let's get in the kitchen and finish cooking. So we've got our finished dough, and now we're going to do the first process of cooking our gnocchis. So I've got here a pot of boiling, lightly salted water. I have here an ice bath, as well as a sheet tray that I've just put a little piece of parchment paper on and a little bit of oil to prevent the gnocchis from sticking. I also have a little slotted spoon so we can pull our gnocchis out of the water when they're ready. So our first step is going to be, we have our mix. We're going to take a pair of scissors and we're going to nip the end off. And so what our process is going to be is we have a pair of scissors in one hand and the gnocchi in the other. And so we're going to lightly squeeze the bag while we're snipping off little gnocchis into the boiling water. So now that we've got our first round of gnocchis simmering in the pot, we're going to let these cook for about a minute until they've floated to the surface, and you'll see them souffle a little bit and increase in volume. At that point, once they've increased in volume by about 50%, that means it's time to scoop them out of the boiling water, and we're going to get them into the ice bath to cool down. So once they're in the ice bath, it's important to only leave them in there for about a minute. They need to cool down, but if you leave them in the ice water for too long, they're going to start to dissolve, and then the finished product isn't going to be what we're looking for. And now you'll want to continue working into these small batches until you've used up all of your base dough. So what's great about this recipe is that a lot of this can be done ahead of time. You can even freeze them at this point to thaw out for another dinner down the road. So it's very versatile, it's really easy to use. All right, so now we're going to begin to prepare our Mornay sauce. So the first step in the process is going to be, we're going to add our whole milk into the pot, and we're going to bring that up to a light simmer with our salt and nutmeg. In a separate pot, we're going to prepare our roux. So first we're going to melt the butter, we're going to incorporate our flour in there, and we're going to let that cook for about 2 to 3 minutes until the raw flavor of the flour is gone. Once that is all set, we're going to add our roux right back into our milk, salt, and nutmeg mixture. And we're going to bring that to a simmer, whisking constantly. You want to make sure that there's no clumps of roux left in there. It is well incorporated, and then our sauce begins to thicken. Once the sauce is thickened, we're going to add our cheese in there. Give that a good stir to melt the cheese. And then we'll head on over to the mixer. We'll get that blended up with an egg yolk. All right, so here we have the base of the Mornay sauce. And so we're going to take this, we're going to pop it in the blender. We're going to blend our 1 egg yolk in there. The egg yolk just adds a little bit of a creamy mouthfeel, a little bit of extra richness to the sauce. And there we have it, our finished sauce. It's nice and smooth, everything's been incorporated. All right, so now at this stage, we're gonna pan-sear our gnocchis. So we have them all nice and cooled down. I have a non-stick pan over about medium to high heat. So we're gonna add a small amount of butter. And we're gonna get that melted. Okay, now that our butter's melted, we're going to add our gnocchis into the pan. Now at this point, it's really important to not mess with them too much. You want to make sure that they have a nice golden brown sear on them, before you start shaking the pan so you can make sure that they're nice and seared on all sides. So it looks like our gnocchis are all set. They're nice and golden brown on all sides. Our sauce has been blended up. Let's go ahead and put it on a plate and let's go and eat. Here we have our finished sauteed gnocchis. I've sauteed off some seasonal vegetables here. Again, this is a very versatile recipe, so you can really utilize whatever's in season, whatever you're picking up from your local farmer's market, even whatever you happen to have in your refrigerator. So today I've featured some delicata squash, some baby kale, as well as some royal trumpet mushrooms. Spinach, arugula, any kind of green would be a great substitute. Again, you can really use whatever vegetables that you have around for this dish. It all goes really well. It's very versatile. And so to finish plating it off, we have our Mornay sauce. We're going to start by putting a few spoonfuls of the Mornay in the bottom of the bowl. Just making sure that that's well spread out. We're going to add our sauteed gnocchis. And then finally our vegetables. Et voila, our finished Parisian gnocchis with Mornay sauce and sauteed seasonal vegetables. Thank you so much for joining us today. Happy holidays from all of us at Chez Rosa, and we hope to see you at the restaurant soon. Be sure to visit ChezRosaBistro.com to check out all the recipes and our seasonal offerings.